Once again, guys, welcome to all of you. Excited, really excited to have our friends from the Zumaya Group and Mariana Zumaya joining us today. Mariana is the managing partner at Zumaya Group. Mariana, I'm going to give you a minute to kind of introduce yourself and the Zumaya Group shortly, but really appreciate you being here today and bringing your expertise.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. For my part, guys, hi, I'm Jeremy Ladyga. I've been with OnBoard for about a year and a half now. My background, for those of you who are sitting, I am a classically trained musician. There may be several of you out in the audience today who decided to go into nonprofits, spent about 12 or 13 years as a fundraiser in the nonprofit space, a range of nonprofits all around the Northeast, where I'm originally from. And I think sort of if you were to look at the tombstone of my nonprofit career, the epitaphs there would say something like this: works really hard, raised a lot of money for great causes that he cares about, was a little distracted by technology. Because I really do feel that technology is a really important way to drive our mission. And so I'm just firing something up here. And so that's a great segue to OnBoard. What is OnBoard? Who are we? What are we all about? OnBoard, really the mission of OnBoard is to make governance simple, effective, and secure. And the most important part of why that's important, right, is really just to help nonprofits simplify governance, right, so that you guys can focus more expressly on your mission and accelerate impact. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about how to run a good meeting, looking at some of the technology behind the OnBoard sort of meeting platform and what ways that can really enable a lot of the things that Mariana is going to address today. But I also want to just note for all of you who are joining us today, and as you're aware, we are here at the good graces of our friends at Microsoft. And Microsoft, of course, is, in addition to all the private sector technology that they support, is really committed to delivering technology solutions that are accessible, affordable, and relevant for nonprofits elsewhere, right? So OnBoard, we are really proud to have been recently selected as a Microsoft Tech for Social Impact independent software vendor. And so really just want to thank them for hosting this for us, for bringing us all together. We're really excited about this collaboration, which just enhances the utilization of both Microsoft Azure Cloud, AI services within Microsoft Azure Cloud, and how that all comes together to help you guys run much more effective board meetings. All right. So as we go, I just want to have kind of take a quick pause here, and I do have a one poll. Happy to see where you guys are all from. Maybe I should address the goals first before we get into this. So really, what are we focused on today? What are really the key takeaways for today, right? We're going to talk about some common board meeting challenges that nonprofits face. We'd love, again, feedback from you. Want to hear from you guys and what you're struggling with. But we'll kind of use our own sort of expertise and cloud on this side and the great work that Zumaya Group has been doing to color a lot of those challenges and help you guys figure out how to explore the 6-step framework that Zumaya Group has put together and is working with nonprofits all over the country with, that really does drive that more effective board meeting, right? And then we're going to kind of tie the room together in terms of how technology specifically is really going to allow you guys to drive that effective board meeting, right from the pre-meet, right from the preparation of materials, all the way through to the end when we're trying to find actionable steps to take step forward and drive our mission. So those are our key goals today. Mariana, sound good to you?
Sounds perfect.
All right, good. One more piece of house cleaning just before we get rolling. Love to see sort of the scope of where geographically our folks are from, but tell us a little bit about yourselves. We love to see, are you a board member here trying to figure out how to drive your board forward? Are you an administrator? Are you a nonprofit leader? Just want to get a broad sense for who's joining us today and where your interests lie. Mariana, with the varying roles that might be in here today, what do you guys see yourself typically working with in your work at the Zumaya Group, which we'll get to in a moment?
Yeah, I think most of the people that we work with is probably, it begins with the nonprofit leader, just needing some assistance in their board operations for sure.
Yeah, that's right. But as you and I, obviously, Mariana, you and I met for the very first time at a workshop that you guys were hosting up in Denver. It was a great way to kind of get interested. You guys, really inspiring event, and of course, there were administrators, there were nonprofit leaders there, and there were actual volunteers and board members in that room. So obviously, this really tracks across the entire spectrum of what this webinar I think really speaks to. It covers from end to end. Good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if you can see those roles, but it looks like we do have a lot of board members in the room here today, which is great, and primarily nonprofit leaders. So really exciting, and thank you guys all for joining us. What is the challenge that speaks to you guys the most, right? What is the number one culprit for you folks in the room today that drives sort of inefficiencies in your board meetings? What are the things that are holding us back? Would love you guys to give us a little bit of feedback on this. I don't know, Mariana, what is your sort of, what's your prediction on what you think is going to be the top issue in the room today?
I want to say that board members may be feeling that they're not 100% prepared when they show up to the meetings. I'm going to go for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Having board members come unprepared to meetings, like many of the folks on our call today, been sitting in a board meeting and your board member asks a question about something on page 1 of the board packet. I mean, come on.
Oh,
yeah.
wait,
Okay.
I got it right.
I think we got it right. So board members coming to meetings unprepared, kind of leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Inefficient and unproductive board meetings, not far behind. So this is good stuff, guys. We're going to get to all these things. We hear you, and I think you guys will get a ton from our framework today. All right, so guys, thank you so much for participating in that poll. I think it's time to kick it over to Mariana. Mariana, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about the Zumaya Group and whom you're working with. Excited to get this started.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Mariana Zumaya, and the reason I'm excited to speak about this subject today is because I am the managing partner at the Zumaya Group, which has consulted hundreds of nonprofits on their board operations. In addition to that, I'm also the secretary for the executive board of the Salvation Army in the Western United States. So I have seen firsthand how critical running an effective board meeting is. In fact, the Harvard Business Review did a study, and the results say that executives spend an average of 23 hours per week in meetings. This equates to nearly 50% of their work week dedicated to meetings alone. So what we're going to be covering today is what I believe is the ideal structure of every board meeting. Since nonprofits often invite business leaders who are already juggling numerous meetings to serve on their boards, it's essential that we structure the meetings effectively. The quality of these meetings directly impacts the engagement and commitment of our board members. So today's session will be successful if you leave with a clear understanding of what makes a good board meeting and feel confident in applying what you've learned to improve the way that you run yours. So let me start off with this framework that you'll see on the screen shortly. We at the Zumaya Group refer to it as the board meeting structure in terms of what happens to prepare for your meeting, during, and after. And let me first elaborate for the spirit of looking at it from the perspective of the board member, which we have a lot today, right? Attending the meeting to validate the structure, because I think that's going to be helpful. Have you ever seen that coffee mug that says, "I just left a meeting," that could have been an email? I'm sure you said yes, Jeremy?
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. I'm sure a few of you are nodding your heads right now. This often happens due to the lack of planning, organization, or simply not being clear on the purpose of the meeting. Because nonprofit board members volunteer their time, it's important to ensure meetings are well run to keep them engaged and prevent burnout. We're all seeking more efficient ways to manage our time, and by mastering this meeting structure, even starting small, you'll see immediate benefits with ongoing improvements over time. So to achieve success with our board meeting structure, there are 6 key steps to follow. I'll explain and provide context for each step, highlighting their importance. But for now, let's briefly review the steps. Number 1 is drafting the agenda for the meeting. Number 2 is a process that we refer to as call for content. Step 3 is finalizing the pre-read materials to ensure that what's sent to board members in advance is both productive and valuable. Step 4 is to distribute the pre-read materials in a timely manner, ensuring everyone has the opportunity to prepare and be informed for the meeting. The next step is the board meeting itself. This is the critical time when your most strategic volunteers come together to make impactful decisions. And then the last step is to delegate. So now we're going to move on to drafting the agenda. Our goal in implementing these steps is to ensure that from the moment that your meeting starts, Everyone is invested and devoted. With that in mind, let's begin with the number one step. So I would say 1 to 2 weeks before your meeting happens, there should be someone who owns the responsibility of drafting the agenda. For the most part, every board has a standing agenda. However, in order to make the meeting more valuable and unique, you need to make sure the agenda is reflective of the things that you want your board to weigh in, or you want the board to support. And you may think, well, yeah, that's kind of obvious. We need to draft an agenda. However, the quality, the consistency, and the timing of drafting the agenda are all key for setting a foundation for success. And let me share an example from my experience. For the executive board that I manage, we start preparing about 2 weeks before the meeting. The board chair, vice chair, and I have a bi-weekly standing meeting where we draft a preliminary agenda, and then we refine leading up to the board meeting. So let's move on to call for content. This is the step that we call content for process because there are multiple stakeholders that you must rely on for updates. They're going to go into step number 3, which is finalizing the pre-read, and you need to give these people time to give you that information. For example, let's say you have committees, right? And you need the committee chairs to provide an update for, let's say, an event that's being planned, a property that's being built, financials, etc. You will then gather that information from them in this call for content process. And it can be a short summary or a headline previewing what is going to be decided or discussed during the board meeting. And every month or every quarter when you have your board meeting, this process should be standard. The same way, from the same people, at the same time. So they know what to expect in order to make this process more efficient. And this should happen right after you drafted your agenda and before you begin writing your pre-read, which is the next step. But before we go to the next step, this reminds me of a funny analogy. So my husband, Joey, who is a founding partner also at the Zumaya Group and also serves on several boards, he wakes up at 4:30 every morning and goes to Starbucks. Now that couldn't be me. I'm not a morning person, but no matter where he is, whether it's here in the Santa Barbara area where we live or like in Atlanta, DC, his coffee always comes out the same. And we aim for that same level of consistency in our board meeting, which is why I share that analogy reminding me of that. So that attendees always know what to expect and are motivated to keep coming back. Because we want that. So now we're going to move to the pre-read, to finalize the pre-read. So now you've drafted your agenda, you did the call for content and organized all the information for the meeting. It's time to finalize the pre-read. In this step, the person responsible for sending out the pre-read, something we're going to discuss next, should review it to ensure it's as concise and effective as possible before distribution. Sending the pre-read. In this step, the finalized pre-read is sent out to the board, and I recommend to send it ideally about 48 hours before the meeting. Now, if you've never heard the concept of a pre-read, let me elaborate on why I feel this step in this process, it's usually makes or breaks a successful board meeting. So, have you ever been to a meeting where you arrive on time? But the meeting started late, about 10-15 minutes go by, the person running the meeting is fumbling the agenda. The board members are looking at each other like, what's going on? Who's gonna go first? What are we talking about today? And then, because he had such a rough start, 45 minutes go by, it's almost over, everybody's gonna have to rush back to work, if it's just like a lunch meeting, right? And nothing was accomplished. Overall, a bad experience. The pre-read, if it's done correctly and effectively, not only eliminates the risk that you would find yourself in a scenario like this, it's going to provide a good experience for the board. They're showing up informed, they know in advance what will be covered and decided, they are equipped and prepped, and will have much more respect for the organization in terms of engagement, and that's the result you want from a RAN board meeting. So I'm sure some of you folks have had that experience, hopefully not, but I know I have, so I wanted to share that
I was gonna say,
analogy.
not like anybody on this webinar feels seen right now or anything like that, right? And give us a thumbs up
Personally
if you guys
attacked.
yeah, if you feel personally attacked and are excited to kind of find our way out of it.
That's great. That's a great way to put it. Thumbs up if you've been attacked.
There you go.
Um, Another story that I wanted to share is that recently I had an executive director told us that after learning about our pre-read approach from a previous presentation, he began sending out pre-reads. He started receiving feedback from board members who hadn't attended in months, saying things like, I really appreciate how you're preparing us for the board meetings with these pre-reads. This approach made him appear more organized and, most importantly, showed that he valued their time, leading to a noticeable increase in attendance. To attract and recruit high-profile members, those who can help us secure major funding or bring a strong network, you need to demonstrate that you run structured meetings. Implementing a pre-read is a common practice that showcases your commitment to organization and productivity. And Jeremy, I'm very fond of a quote. I'm not sure if you've heard it before, or any of you have heard it before, that says, trust equals consistency over time. Trust equals consistency over time. And this is especially relevant to board meetings, because to gain a strong commitment from your board members, they need to trust that you value their time, and you will ensure they are informed and engaged. Remember, these are volunteers, so being mindful of their time is crucial. The call for content, drafting the agenda, and preparing the pre-read are all ways to demonstrate that you're a good steward of their time. And Jeremy, I understand that OnBoard can simplify the points that I mentioned earlier. Could you walk us through some of the OnBoard features that can help bring all these ideas to life?
Yeah, I love that. And the whole idea around, give me that saying again, trust equals consistency.
Consistency over time.
Consistency over time. Well, that's precisely the kind of stuff that I think technology does enable. If we've got a single source of truth, just like for those of you who are fundraisers in the room, you can't fundraise without a fundraising CRM, right? So that you can truly understand your donors' interests, their needs, their wants, their giving patterns. And so the way I like to sort of think about what a solution like OnBoard offers is sort of that kind of single source of truth for everything for your board that allows that consistency to really take place. So quick disclaimer, guys, you're seeing obviously OnBoard in front of us. Welcome to OnBoard, cloud-based governance. You're going to see a ton of different features here. We're going to focus pretty exclusively on the meeting process, how it looks to build that pre-read, how it looks to collaborate on that agenda. Again, there's a poll at the end of this. If you guys are interested in learning more, we're happy to jump on and find some folks on our side to tour you around. But board portals, really any board portal worth its salt, helps this meeting process enormously, right? For those of you who are constantly sending around circular emails and reply alls on meeting materials, for those of you who are struggling to get folks to engage with content, maybe in a SharePoint site or in your Google Drive, this really does replace all of that. So we're going to focus on our meetings today. I'm going to jump into a meeting that I'm preparing for next week, right? And what we want to do is do a couple things. Of course, OnBoard is going to allow you guys to publish this meeting in a variety of states to give your board members the insights they need at the right time. Are we ready to share all the board materials? Probably not right away, right? So let's just make sure that we get a save the date out. We're going to put this meeting on everybody's calendar so we're all on the same page about when and where and how we can log in through our team or our Zoom remote meeting and virtual conferencing here, right? But when we think about what it means to really organize the agenda development process, right? Of course, aside from these details and how I'm inviting all my invitees for that meeting, this agenda tab is really where a lot of that work is going to take place, right? So a couple things you'll notice right out the front. As we're preparing that initial agenda, we've got this very visibly in draft state, right? We've got a few people tagging along to be able to help us to develop this agenda item or this growing agenda. So if we are presenting or proposing an agenda for our board meeting, and we've got other people who have some feedback on that, of course, they can participate in a discussion about that agenda item right within the board portal. Do we want to be reviewing OnBoard software purchase as a board right now, or do we want to kick that to next week? of course, we've got some feedback that this is in fact a strategic initiative that really does align with what we're doing and aligns with our fiscal year. The time is now to really start thinking about that, right? Or similarly, if we are working through some of our audit committee, maybe they weren't quite ready to prepare the audit report for last month, a discussion about, hey, are we ready for this, or is this something that we want to punt? Okay, no, I can see from my sort of collaborative feedback here that we're good to go, right? We're ready to tackle this agenda topic in due form. Now, within these, each agenda item, super easy to build, right? I can add sections on the fly. I can take sections of the agenda and nest them within, just like we would in a bullet pointed agenda on a Word document, right? But when I'm ready to go ahead and kick this over to finalized view, it's going to just notify that everybody that we've got a finalized agenda here, right? We're ready to delete all the commentary around this, and we're ready to get to work to build the actual board packet. Now, the process of doing that within OnBoard is really simple. Typically what we see, most organizations, if you are doing your due diligence around trying to assemble a single unified paginated board packet, what we often see is it's a variety of different reports across different divisions and departments and different programs that we're running, right? Anything from a compensation committee to reviewing our Form 990 to maybe a report from our nominating governance committee. That's a lot of documentation that lives in a lot of different places, right? So as part of that call for content piece, what we're going to be able to do is receive those documents, right, really quickly, include them, drop them into that agenda item where I'm identifying sort of the duration for that particular agenda item, right? We've got a document that either is from my desktop or maybe it's a resource that lives right within your board portal. So include that all really quickly. I can even link actions if we wanted to be executing on a specific approval or we want to have the board take a specific survey as part of that agenda topic, right? So all of this, what this ultimately does is build one cohesive agenda, which as I go back to my details, let's go ahead and save our changes. Come back to our main page. And what we're seeing here is OnBoard is going to ask me to rebuild this board packet. And I want you guys just to see really quickly, as I talk this through, we've got probably, I'm guessing there's probably 12 to 13 or 14 documents that are comprising our larger board packet, right? So the idea of PDFing all those together and then emailing that out, right, can be tricky, can be complicated. So one of the things that it's going to do, obviously, it's taking the time to build all those documents together, right? And this is ultimately where that pre-read is going to come from. Hey, guys, we've got our board packet ready. We've got it assembled. All the materials are ready for review, right? So what I'm going to simply do is come back into my permissioning within this meeting and just send a note to the entire group. Hey, everybody, materials are ready. We're really excited for next week's meeting. Please dedicate a little bit of time in the pre-read to all the materials so that we can come to the meeting together collectively and prepared, right? So those are just a few things. There's a lot to show within here. We're going to get to a few other things in a minute, but Mariana, let me kick it back over to you. Let's jump back over to our presentation here. And I know you want to kind of walk through some of the other steps.
Yeah. So now we're going to get to the board meeting aspect. By now, you follow the steps we've covered, right? All your board members should be prepared and engaged. If you focus on just two things coming out of today's session, make sure to send 1, a meeting pre-read, and number 2, start and end your meetings on time. These actions will have the biggest impact. Now let's focus on what happens during the actual board meeting. While every nonprofit structure may differ, we advise nonprofits to concentrate their board members' time on what we call the 2 Ds. The first D is discussion, focusing on important topics and areas where the board needs to weigh in. The second D is decision, determining what needs to be decided during the meeting. The value of handling housekeeping and preparation in the initial step is what it allows you to maximize the important time during board meetings by focusing on the 2 Ds, discussion and decision. You ensure that your meetings address the crucial topics and decisions. And we urge nonprofits to prioritize these areas because they've earned the right to use their time efficiently. For instance, on the board that I manage, executives fly in from across the country 4 times a year for a day and a half of crucial face time. Given the value of this time, I make sure that all the preparatory work is completed well in advance. This way, when we convene, every agenda item is either a substantive discussion or a critical decision, ensuring that we make the most out of our limited time together. And delegate, let's go to delegate. And it should come as no surprise, but to reiterate the importance of consistency, it's crucial to ensure responsibilities are delegated promptly after each board meeting. To put it simply, if there are two key areas to focus on for a strong and effective nonprofit board, they are number one, the quality of the meetings, and number two, the quality of communication between the meetings. Master these two elements and you'll have a thriving board. And Jeremy, I know that OnBoard can help your board meeting run smoothly. I know you started talking about that when putting the agenda together. And it can also help you with maybe some assignment follow-up items for certain board members or the entire board. Can you share with us how OnBoard can help us streamline this process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, just as it relates to, some of the things that we're reading and some of these, I'm going to scroll back one slide here. I want to draw everyone's attention, like things like this, right? Like, so OnBoard, obviously, we've been in this space for about 20 years. We've been taking the time to engage with customers of ours, with just generally with folks who are running boards on what else makes great look like, right? This one really hits home for me. 63% of survey respondents viewed as having an engaged board really the primary factor that drives board success. Almost exclusively one of the biggest things that makes a board great is when everybody is in the boat rowing together, right? So I just wanted to show, as it relates to some of the prior things we looked at, maybe that pre-meeting, I just want to show you guys a quick email that comes directly from OnBoard that really, in my eyes, really characterizes what makes OnBoard great and drives engagement really through the roof. So what they're going to get from the platform automatically, if you guys should enable that with an OnBoard, is this meeting brief email that does a couple things. Obviously, if I haven't RSVP'd for that meeting for whatever reason, it's going to invite me to do so. But I want to see some reactions in the chat to this one. Hey, Jeremy, you've got a board meeting in 3 days, and you've really only read about 16% of the board material. Time to get to work, right? I mean, that one for me, I think when I started learning what OnBoard really brings to the table, this is what jumps out as me as not a punitive measure, right? This is not intended to be Big Brother and yell at our board members. It's intended to empower them with the information they need to get to work. And oh, by the way, maybe since the last time you've reviewed that email, Mariana may have updated a few of the documents within your board packet. So if you are really focused on board composition review, it's going to be something that you're going to want to spend a little bit more time with because there are some changes there. So I just want to think about engagement. I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to something like that because I really do feel like that ends up telling a lot of the story around what makes OnBoard really great. So
yeah, and that keeps you accountable, that email that you shared.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. Yep. So now that we get to the board meeting, want to draw your attention to a few things. Obviously, for those of you who are still printing out board packets, putting them in 3-ring binders so that people show up to your meetings and can flip through and make notes, what you're going to see here is really the digital replacement or the digital alternative to that is accessible either on your board members' laptops or on their iPads or right in their pocket, right on their mobile device. So if they happen to need to review something on the fly, they're going to be able to visit their meeting. They're going to be able to open up their board book. And then during the meeting, a couple things are going to happen, right? What this has done is now squashed all that material together in one place, in a highly accessible place where I can kind of click through the agenda. I can navigate through the agenda here in my sort of left side navigation bar, and I can click through the various documents. I can review all the various reports that are here. So this relates to pre-read, of course, but this is where we're attending our meeting, right here, right? So that I can review the materials that I've reviewed in the past. I can check on various annotations that maybe I've left behind for myself. If I am talking or speaking to something specific, I can leave talking points behind for myself. If I've got certain questions about things that are happening within here, or I want to share a highlight, of course, I can go ahead and send this directly to Mariana. right? So now her own private packet, which again, is no longer printed out in front of them in the board meeting, but it lives with them wherever they go in the cloud. Now Mariana's got some reactions and reflections that I've been passing along to her as part of my own review, or perhaps as part of what I'm participating in during the meeting, right? Just also want to call your attention to this handy little agenda pacer line, right? If we are really focused on maintaining consistency and building trust, Mariana said it best, it requires us to be attuned to people's time, right? Our board members are giving up their time, their talent, and their treasure, right? The classic sort of 3 T's of board service. We want to make sure that we're on time. So OnBoard is going to be able to follow you throughout the flow of the meeting, keep you guys on track, right? In a way that functionally is a little bit tough to do, other than someone standing in the back with a clock and shouting at someone to keep the agenda moving, right? Similarly, as we're looking at the various documents to approve, right, I can even within here kick open an approval of something that we need to do. Are we approving next year's annual budget during this board meeting? Well, naturally, I can come in here, provide some discussion on that particular vote, cast my vote within here, display my results or hide them from the board, right? And then with one click, I'm right back into the board portal. I'm right back into my board book, and we're carrying on with the meeting. So that's what it looks like to live with OnBoard during the actual meeting itself. I will say from an administrative perspective, thumbs up in the chat for anybody who has to take meeting minutes in due course of your board meetings. OnBoard has both some current really important and impressive minutes taking tools, as well as some exciting news I'm going to share with you in a moment about where our minutes tool kind of goes. But what lives within here now is a functional framework around the agenda that allows me to, if I go ahead and throw open edit minutes here, it's going to give me an opportunity. Maybe this is where I'm coming back to review. Oh, no, Stephen actually was at this meeting. No, Marshall was attending and virtually, and Jeremy wasn't there, right? So I can update my attendance as we go. But you'll see I'm tracking notes across things. I'm tracking motions to get things started. My own personal favorite and a story that I'll tell is having been a fundraiser for 12 to 15 years, walking into a board meeting where my board chair says, hey, Barbara and Jack just moved down the street. I just met them at the country club or what have you. And I want to get them involved in the organization. I think they'd be a great potential future board members, but I want to get them interested in what we do, so maybe they support us as well. So what we're actually doing in the flow of our meeting minutes is assigning those tasks to our board members as the meeting flows. What's really important about this, of course, is that those tasks captured in the meeting minutes in the way that can be a little bit unclear in our traditional meeting minute structure. But more importantly, as soon as I assign that task, you're going to see that Natalia and Gilbert are going to be getting updates around tasks that are assigned to them. So it starts within the meeting minutes, but then it leans on what is a really robust sort of a to-do and task management process to help us identify next steps, assign who needs to own those next steps, and make sure that they live in the same place where I'm attending my meetings, where I'm voting on certain important matters, so that at the end of the day, when I'm a board member and I come to revisit my dashboard, the things that I'm going to see are the things that are actionable next steps from that specific meeting. Have we assigned a group assessment that needs to happen as part of that meeting? Do we need to review our last meeting minutes? And then, of course, what tasks specifically am I responsible for? Have I really hung my hat on, right? So it's a way to keep everybody moving forward in the same direction with really, really simple technology that, incidentally, as I'm looking at this, I'm going to be able to also, let me throw those tasks open again. When I open this in full screen, the administrative tools around this are really, really impressive, right? So if I want to see on our September board meeting what tasks were assigned, what were our actionable next steps, or if I want to go back to my August advisory council meeting, I can go from meeting to meeting and even identify tasks that have been assigned to specific committees or groups, right? So what ends up being sometimes a little bit of a sort of spread thin or unclear sort of next steps in terms of delegation really get simplified with the kind of technology that's going to live in everybody's pocket, right? Ping notify people when things are going on and keep their attention focused when they're able to give their time and attention to what's going on. How was that, Mariana? Pretty good?
I love all the features. I feel like it just makes everything so nice and organized and clean.
Love that. Love that. Love that. Excellent. Well, I think, have we concluded sort of your delegation? Do you have any sort of like kind of last thoughts in terms of like things that we're sort of missing
Yeah.
here? Let's kind of close the loop and tie the room together a little bit on your 6 steps.
Yeah, do you mind bringing the six step framework back on the screen?
Of course, of course. Let me go ahead.
Thank you, Jeremy.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Well, in closing, while this step framework that you see on the screen may not be revolutionary, its effectiveness in streamlining nonprofit meetings is remarkable. I use it with every board I'm part of, and its impact speaks for itself. By implementing these steps, you'll not only elevate the board member experience, but also strengthen relationships and boost engagement among your dedicated volunteers. I hope this has been helpful in guiding your thoughts on how to make your nonprofit board meetings as effective as possible. Jeremy, that is it for me today.
Love it. Love it. Before we jump to the poll, sorry, I know Evan, my friend, is on the back end. Wanted to just, let's hear from the group here. Let's jump into a little bit of a Q&A. I want to see where are people kind of really most focused. I'm seeing some great notes in here about using Zoom AI Assistant for meeting minutes. I teased a little bit of something while I was showing our meeting minutes tool. So I'll go ahead and share with the group. Sometime in the next, say, 2 or 3 months, as a result of our acquisition of another board portal that really does focus on AI and technology, OnBoard is going to be having sort of a built-in automatic minutes taker, right? So the idea that while you have Zoom AI Assistant can track those meeting minutes, can come up with a transcript that we need to find a place for, OnBoard's automated minutes tool is going to be built into the software, right? It's going to allow you to take those transcripts, piece them together, fold them into the broader agenda, and deliver a minutes tool that's going to be just so much simpler to use, so much easier to get up and running. So let's talk a little bit just quickly, Mariana, about AI and how do you think, hearing what OnBoard is prepared to do artificial intelligence wise, what do you think, what role does AI have to play in sort of the board space? Because I know it's such a hot topic right now. Everybody's thinking about it. We're trying to figure out how it's going to benefit us. What are you guys sort of seeing at Zumaya Group in terms of how organizations are using it today?
Well, I definitely think that is something that may be intimidating at first, right? Because it's new and it's kind of powerful when you play around with it. But I definitely think it's going to be something that helps boards actually succeed. Just how we're talking about the meetings, right? You owe the typical having someone typing really fast, trying to capture everything. But now if you have an AI sort of assistant that helps you do that, it takes something off your plate, and then you can focus that time to really maybe build relationships with your board members, speak strategy when it comes to fundraising. So I definitely think that it's going to be a friend to us that are in the impact sector versus something that is going to work against us.
Yeah, absolutely. On the engagement side, I had some questions for you. One of the things that I think about when I've participated both on boards, when I've prepared a board meeting for my development committee or my governance committee, I sort of alluded to it earlier in our discussion. Board member shows up, asks a question about something that's right on the cover page or right on page 2, like engagement. Like how do you know what sort of signs can we look for? What kind of evidence can we look for from our board to know before they get to the board meeting that they really are engaged, that the work that we've done to properly draft an agenda, to finalize that call for content, to develop that pre-read, how do we know that work means something?
Yeah. No, I think it's you see the work is being done when you see less of that happening in the boardroom, right? The quality of questions. Board members who have thoroughly viewed the materials will ask insightful and specific questions, and that indicates that they've processed the content rather than just kind of skimming through it. I mean, you can't make anybody do something they don't want to do, but what you can do is you can set the stage to make it as easy as possible for them to do it. So for me, in our practice, I always believe less is more. Can you make it as structured as possible, as concise, headlines, right? Because if you give them pages and pages of financials, a lot of people don't know how to read them or don't want to read them because it's just numbers and it's pages. So
Intimidating.
can
It's
you give a
intimidating.
headline?
Sure.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
can you come up with a headline like you have the financials in front of you if you want to read them, but the headline is we are short $50,000 for the building that's going up on Fifth Street. We need to put together a strategy to fundraise those $50,000. How can you help? How can just make the ask very clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And just to kind of bring sort of this back to technology, bring this back to onboard a little bit. One of the things that I showed that email that your board members are going to get ahead of a board meeting, and I think that's a great first step, right? That is a preemptive measure from us as nonprofit leaders, as administrators, that we don't have to think a lot about, right? That the platform is going to kind of take care of for us to draw our board members' eye to the things that really require their focus and attention. So I'm putting OnBoard back on the screen just because I want to show all of you what the other side of those analytics actually look like, right? I can glean to a board member how much work remains, but if I'm curious leading into a board meeting, there's this little curious analytics tab here on my meeting, and what you see here, I think, is similarly really impressive and really an important way to understand why OnBoard is clearly viewed as kind of a leader in this board management space. Engagement metrics, right? What percentage of my meeting attendees are actually looking at the meeting, are actually looking at the board book? Are they downloading material? I think more importantly, where are they spending the most of their time, right? Where within the board packet, which, as many of you on this line can attest, can be 100 to 150, sometimes a 200-page board packet, right? Super daunting, right? So not only do I believe that OnBoard simplifies the review of that material, but gives us as nonprofit leaders the tools we need to really see, okay, we're sending out this board packet 2 weeks in advance, or 1 week in advance, whatever your cadence is. And here we are 2 or 3 days before, and we're seeing really limited engagement on some really, really important matters, right? If I'm focused, well, there it is. There's a litigation update. I think that would be something that would be of great interest to my board. But it's clear that we're not getting a ton of views on some of that material. So, again, analytics are only as good as how they allow you to take action, refine things, do things a little bit better. So in addition to all the serious, all the sort of confined 6 individual steps that Mariana has shared with all of you, allow technology to be the undergirding of that, right? To be the underlying sort of platform for that, to simplify how you guys are engaging, but glean some insights in terms of where your folks are on their own journey to understand the material. Incidentally, of course, if I'm really focused on how people are engaging with the content, you can see when they've opened it up and when they haven't, right? So some great tools within here. Again, analytics or analytics, it's another kind of a buzzword, but I just view them as things to help us make better decisions about what we're doing, how we're running our board meetings, how we're engaging with our board. And hopefully we walk out of here making some tough decisions about charting a path forward. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for indulging me there. As Mariana can attest, I can go for days on OnBoard. I love this stuff. It's super simple technology that is going to enable these 6 steps. I think in some really, really, really powerful and important ways. So, guys, this has been an awesome group. I can't possibly keep up with all the commentary and the notes and the advice that I'm seeing in the chat. I really, really appreciate everybody's participation on this. I'm seeing some great stuff around AI. Is there anything in here, Mariana, that you're seeing that you wanted to kind of call to attention? Some great suggestions on AI tools that folks can use. I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing that. At least I see that people are taking that not risk, but that like going for it to make sure that they utilize AI as something that they can get some help with. So I see, yeah, the great comments. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, some great stuff. Great stuff. Well, guys, we're going to start to kind of bring our session today to a close. There is a poll up on your screen. We've learned a ton today, and hopefully I teased a little bit about the platform OnBoard that. And if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more, take some time to fill out this poll. We'd love to be in touch with you. We'd love to be working with you to generate and drive better meetings forward. I do see a few other questions in the Q&A that I'm excited to get to. let me scroll through 1 second here. There was a great one I just passed over. So if you guys are set with the poll, I'm gonna leave that up for another second. We're just gonna go ahead and get started with our Q&A. I think one of the best ones I've seen here from David Berland. Mariana, how do you define the difference between, or how do you distinguish pre-read material and the board packet? Are those one and the same thing, or are they definitionally a little bit different?
I want to say that they are similar, but I did see a comment in here that made a lot of sense. Let me find it. It was something like, it's pretty much the same thing, except you should read it before you get to the board meeting. So it's essentially a board pack, but the pre-read, like it says it on the name, it's something that you have to read before the board meeting starts. So that's why I recommend about 48 hours in advance to send it. That way we know everybody's busy, but you still don't want to send it way, like a week in advance. People are going to forget, they're going to flag it, they're not going to read it. So I would say 48 hours is kind of like the sweet spot to send it, so people have time to go through any PDFs or any other documentation that you send that they need to read in order to be prepared for the meeting. So I would say it's very similar to a board pack, but the point is that you read it before you get to the meeting.
Yeah, and that, the material is there. You're developing smart questions around the material ahead of the meeting, right? So that when we're getting there, and incidentally, right, a lot of what that pre-read is, when I think about the old days when we used to print out those board packets, I'd have my highlighter, I'd be making notes in the margins for myself, that when I'm able to house this thing either in my pocket or on my computer screen and use the kind of annotative tools within OnBoard that allow me to take those notes, I think that's really indicative of a board member who's really taken some time, lived within the pre-read, identified some specific questions, so that when we get to the board meeting, we're getting right to work, right? And that's really the key thing. Get to work, let's talk through the issues, and let's make some really important decisions.
Yeah, and I really like the way that and maybe because I'm someone who is in charge of a board, I like that OnBoard makes people accountable to do the role that they're supposed to be playing, right? If it says that you haven't read it, I'm not saying you're going to put people on the spot and share this slide on your board meeting, but it could help you have those conversations in terms of engagement and kind of checking in with your board member. Like, if they're not reading the board packet or, the pre-read the materials, if they're not reading it, they're at 10%, 17%, like Jeremy. Just kidding. It could help you facilitate that conversation to check in on them and see, like, if this is not working for them, how can we put together a plan so that way they are more involved and they're present in the board meeting.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I did want to talk about I saw a question on the chat that you may be able to answer or have add some color to it. Yeah. Catherine is wondering if you can use this software even if you're meeting in person.
Yeah, that's what great looks like with board portal technology, right? Because again, it lives seamlessly across the device ecosystem that any of us are comfortable with, right? The question we often get is, hey, we have a board that is, yes, of course, some working, busy professionals who don't have a ton of time to do a lot of stuff, but also some retirees who are here to give back, right? And they may feel a little bit less comfortable with the technology. How does OnBoard fit into sort of that kind of a profile of a board member? And I like to say this, I mean, if your board members are comfortable texting with friends and family and neighbors and colleagues, if they're comfortable using like Facebook Messenger to communicate with folks, OnBoard is going to feel pretty natural to them, right? And so the question is, the software being used in the meeting in person? That's what great looks like. Does everybody do that? Not everyone's got a device that can kind of come with them. So we do have folks who are downloading the board packet and providing those to materials to board members in advance so they can live on whatever screen, but it really great looks like using the solution in the board meeting. Incidentally, that's also where we're enabling our video conferencing as well, right? So the idea, I've got one simple space. In fact, here, I'll just go ahead and I'm going to jump back into OnBoard here. I'm in my dashboard, which is really the space that just aggregates everything I need to think about in this moment, right? This is the kind of thing where I'm a busy board member. I'm sitting down on a Saturday afternoon and just saying, what do I need to focus on right now? as part of my commitment and contributions to this board. And so this dashboard is going to do everything from bring quick announcements, sort of one-directional announcements to the board around maybe there's a fundraising event that we want their participation in, right? Of course, upcoming meetings, right, that we need to be kind of mindful of, any sort of governance actions that are requiring my feedback or my sort of attention, right? And also just a host of resources that might live in my resources folder. But this is precisely where all that stuff happens. And I do see a great question from Edward as well. After the packet is completed, does that meeting minutes within the structure, does that meeting match the meeting agenda as well? So two things. As a board member, I'm visiting my dashboard and I want to jump right into the board packet. It's just as simple as that, right? Right from my dashboard, I can jump into the material, start engaging with it. Really, really, really easy to do that. Similarly, what I've done is created a copy of that September board meeting that we've been looking at. And what I wanted to show you really quickly is got the same agenda, right? I still need to load in my reports and stuff, but I want to go ahead and get started with a copy of the minutes. What I'm going to do is just ask for it to take that framework of the agenda once it's been finalized and just use that as sort of the jumping off point for all of my minute taking, right? So as I navigate through here, I'm taking my attendance. It'll provide some kind of nice header information, right? And all this is the agenda. I'm able to stand here. I'm had to add notes on the fly across all the various sort of items that we've been discussing. So absolutely, yes, this can look and feel and live just like the agenda. And the simplicity with which we can take these meeting minutes, send them out for review, go ahead and add them directly to my resources folder, right? By virtue of just creating a PDF. All right, super simple. I'm going to pick my folder. I'm going to pick the style of resource type that I want to use. And I've already created a previous one. Let's go take a quick peek at the meeting minutes because I actually find these. I mean, I made some assertions about how the meeting minutes can help with action sort of after the set. Let's take a quick peek. So I'm going to jump into, where's my September ones? There you go. So what we're doing is we're looking at a PDF version of what you guys just saw on your screen. That minutes builder takes that data from within there, right? And brings in all those notes around spirited discussions, brings in those tasks. And of course, as a follow-up matter, if I'm a board member who couldn't attend this board meeting, right? And I want to go and I'm reviewing some of the consent agenda or maybe approval of the meeting minutes, I want to jump back into that board packet really quickly to kind of see what was discussed there, just refresh my memory. All these hyperlinks really are exactly what you think they would be, right? These are links to get us right back into the board book, right back into the packet, specifically to that page where I've got some questions, right? And so in this case, we're going to jump down to, let's see where we go. Well, not too bad. Page 3 of 160, but you got to sort of get the sense. It's going to bring you exactly where your board members need to go. So great questions there. I will just note, I mean, there are absolutely, of course, again, any board portal worth its salt helps you guys run meetings. The communication vehicles within here are really important. We like to think that OnBoard helps all of us, boards and sort of nonprofit leaders, get out of email and allow all of these discussions to live in one specific place. So messengers, of course, unlimited storage of resources and documents, any governance action, whether I'm sending out a vote on next year's budget, I want to poll the group on a meeting date, or I want them to complete an annual board assessment, which I know Mariana and Zumaya Group do a lot of work around assessments with their boards. A lot of those kind of features are going to live right within here and be right at everyone's fingertips and right in their pocket. Let's see. Any other great questions? These are great questions.
I did get a question directly sent to me asking if I can share a best practice for when materials require updating the pre-read. So I can just talk about one point because I know we have a couple of minutes left. I would say that a few best practices is set a clear deadline for final changes. So we know that things can happen, but if you establish a firm deadline for updates before the pre-read materials are distributed, this is going to minimize last minute changes and ensures consistency. But then if you do have to, because it happens, focus on key items. Only make updates if the changes will significantly impact the discussion or decision making. Yeah. Minor edits, they can usually be addressed at the meeting itself. But these practices will help you maintain a balance between keeping materials current and then also respecting everyone's time.
Yeah, I love that. And just the color on that is, of course, what we all struggle with from time to time. We've sent out the pre-read. Oh no, my CFO just realized there's like 2 digits missing in one of the reports. Like we have to reissue that report, right? I think is that sort of what we're talking about there. And I think we all deal with it. I think we all deal with
Hmm.
that. So again, establishing a framework around deadlines, but just refer back to that email I was showing before, right? OnBoard will catch those things. If something changes since the last time I've reviewed it, OnBoard will do the work of bringing that to people's attention in a
Right.
really smart way.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't, I would say that don't feel like you are stepping on maybe too much of their time and feeling bad about sending multiple emails. I think if you just do a clarification email with the right information, it's actually going to help them make better decisions versus hurt.
Yep, love that. And I think I do have a question in the Q&A. We've got time for one more. It's a good question. Is OnBoard available in French? I want to be a little bit careful here, so I'm not telling dirty lies. But I believe OnBoard is really structurally built around the English language, but it does work because it's a browser-based app. It does work with some of the browser translators that are out there with varying degrees of success. But we have had some folks leveraging those kinds of tools within their browser structure to deliver a board portal in French. That it is built around that as well.
We Good
There you go.
question.
Yeah, and happy to talk through things on cost. Obviously, take some time to reach out to OnBoard, schedule some time with us if you're interested in exploring this for your organization. But guys, that's our time for today. Mariana, any sort of final wrap up thoughts? This was fun.
Yeah, this was fun. So excited. I hope everybody can walk away and they learn something new that they can implement on their board, and hopefully it's going to help them. So I'm excited to hear some of that later on in the future.
Yeah, so I am eternally grateful to you, Mariana, for lending your
Of course.
experience and the experience of Zumaya Group with us. Quick shout out again to our partners and friends at Microsoft for hosting this. You guys are
Yep.
awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Reach out with any questions that we can help with going forward, and thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.